So I'm seriously considering buying a Bitcoin miner, even though I don't expect I'll ever break even by mining on it. But you're gonna have to watch until the end to figure out why. Because in this video, I'm going to lay out everything you need to know about the current state of Bitcoin mining. We're gonna talk about halving, net hash growth, best ASICs to get depending on your circumstances, and more. And don't worry if none of that made any sense to you, because I'm gonna explain everything in simple terms, so that at the end of this video, you'll know everything you need to know to help you arrive at your own conclusion on if you should buy a Bitcoin miner or not, which is the main purpose of this video. So before we get started, just know that nothing in this video is financial advice. And now let's get right into it after a quick word from our sponsor. CoinLedger is a crypto and NFT tax software built to save you time and help maximize your tax refund. Thankfully, CoinLedger has made the process of doing this super easy. All you have to do is sign up for an account and link your crypto wallets. That's it. What CoinLedger then does is it looks at the transaction data of those wallets and uses that to automatically generate a tax report for you in your country's local currency. You can then take this report and export it into any tax filing software like TurboTax or TaxAct, or you can send it off directly to an accountant. Best part is that if you use my link in the description below, you can sign up and use CoinLedger entirely for free. And once you're happy with the reports and are ready to export, you can save 10% by using my discount code 𝗧. So make sure you click on that link in the video description below for more details. Most of you probably already know this, but to mine Bitcoin profitably, you need to be running an ASIC miner like this one from Bitmain. They are purpose-built machines just for mining the Bitcoin algorithm, and the point of these machines is that they get an extreme amount of mining performance measured in terahashes for the amount of electricity they use measured in watts. This is commonly referred to as their mining efficiency and can be easily measured as watts per terahash. A practical example of how this works is that if, say, you were to mine Bitcoin on a regular computer's CPU, the amount of power that CPU uses would cost more than the amount of Bitcoin it mined is worth, because a regular computer processor has much worse mining efficiency than a dedicated Bitcoin ASIC miner has. Now, these Bitcoin mining machines are loud, use a lot of power, and produce a lot of heat. But you can actually run them at home and manage all of those issues. I have a full video on how to do that, which I'll link down below. It talks about how anyone can power these machines at home, make them basically completely silent, and how to easily get rid of all of the heat they produce. Or use that heat to warm up your house in the winter for free, if you'd rather. But with that out of the way, I thought I'd just quickly kick this video off by going through sort of the current landscape of notable Bitcoin miners that are currently available to purchase, and kind of how they stack up against each other. And I'll have affiliate links as well as a discount code for all of these miners down in the video description at Coin Mining Central, which is the only ASIC reseller I know I can fully trust to recommend to you guys. So if you make a purchase through those links, the channel gets a small commission at no extra cost to you. And of course, don't forget the discount code down there. Alright, starting with the high end, we have the Bitmain S21, which is the most power efficient regular air-cooled Bitcoin miner available to order. This is the latest generation miners that were just announced by Bitmain, and it does 200 terahash at just below 18 watts per terahash. The downside of these, however, is of course that they are expensive. And something else to note here too is that they are not shipping out to customers until January at the earliest. And to be in that first batch, you also have to pay a premium. But to compete with that one, we have the also newly announced WattsMiner M60 and M60S line, which are close to the S21 in efficiency, but most importantly, they are actually shipping out to customers now, so you'll get it right away. They are also cheaper than the S21, well, except for the highest end one, which is a few $100 more. So slightly less efficient, but more affordable in a way, both by varying degrees depending on which model you choose, of course. But for example, the cheapest one does 156 terahash at just under 20 watts per terahash. Next we have the S19 XP, which again is a step down in efficiency, but also a step down in price. One thing I will say about this specific model though is that they have a reputation of breaking, and you'd probably be better off either taking a step up or down to avoid these. But for reference, these do 141 terahash at 21.5 watts per terahash. And speaking of that, Next we have what I think is the absolute sweet spot between efficiency and affordability right now, which is the S19K Pro, which does 120 terahash. And its efficiency is still very respectable at 23 watts per terahash, in contrast to the top-end S21 that gets just under 18 watts per terahash, but the S19K Pro is of course significantly cheaper per terahash. So that's probably the best balance between efficiency and price right now, but I'll speed through some even cheaper options in descending order. So we then have the Canon Avalon A13 series, where I think the 110 terahash one is probably the most notable model with 30 watts per terahash. Next is the Whatsminer M30++ with 100 terahash at 32 watts per terahash, followed by the Bitmain S19 that gets 19 terahash at 36 watts per terahash, and finally, for one of the best deals I've seen in a while just in terms of price per terahash, we have these used Whatsminer M31S Pluses that does 80 terahashes at 42 watts per terahash. And so I put all of these miners that I've just been talking about in a spreadsheet here so that you can easily compare watts per terahash versus dollar per terahash, which are the, two things you need to always strike a balance between when buying mining hardware. And where that balance point is always gonna depend on your personal circumstances and preference. For fun, I even made this nice little chart to visualize the numbers. But what I'll do is I'll link this spreadsheet down below in the video description if you want to have a closer look at all of this. Okay, so now that we hopefully have a better idea of what ASIC we should be buying, we need to ask ourselves, should we actually be buying one right now? And I'm gonna go over this by sharing a pros versus cons list that I actually put together for myself when looking into if I wanted to buy a Bitcoin ASIC for my own personal at-home mining farm. So when making this list, I ended up with 4 pros and 3 cons. So let's just alternate between pros and cons, starting with the first pro. And that is that ASIC prices are still very low right now and probably will not dip any lower again during this 4-year crypto cycle. So if you're unfamiliar, the crypto market has historically, without fail, worked on a 4-year cycle where every 4 years we see a massive bull market for about 1 year straight, where almost all crypto prices across the board increase like crazy, and then we get a price crash and a 3-year bear market of low crypto prices before the cycle starts over all again. And if history were to repeat itself again, we are kind of getting close to the end of this 3-year down period soon. But why this is relevant is that, of course, when coin prices are low, mining profitability is also low, which means mining hardware prices go way down too. Meaning that right now, mining equipment is, relatively speaking, super cheap. And there's actually a fantastic chart you can find online that has tracked the price of specifically Bitcoin ASIC miners over time. And basically each color line here represents the same generation of Bitcoin mining hardware, and it tracks the dollar price per terahash. So the same metric I used in my spreadsheet that we looked at a minute ago. And as we can see here, prices are very low right now, but we can also see that in the bull market, the prices go way up, even for older generation Bitcoin miners. And what this means for us is that not only are we able to get miners for very cheap right now, but also that the actual miners themselves can be an investment. For example, if we were to buy this 19 terahash S19 we saw at Coin Miner Central for a bit over $1,000, that one would fall roughly on the orange line here, which we can see is a bit over $10 per terahash now. Now, granted, this orange line might not go all the way up to the $120 per terahash mark again like it did in 2021 here, as then it was part of the latest generation of miners, and this next time it will be 1 generation old. So it's more realistic to speculate that it might follow what the yellow line did back in 2021, reaching just under $100 per terahash. And if it does, that of course means that this $1,300 90 terahash miner would be worth almost $9,000 at the next hypothetical price peak. And if you're wondering about the value of used mining hardware, well, historically during the crypto bull markets there have been such a shortage of miners that used units basically sell for the same price as new units of the same model. But let's say that for some odd reason it's way worse this next time around, and the graph only goes half as high as it did last time. That still means you'll be able to sell this $1,300 ASIC for something like $4,500. meaning you've more than tripled your money, and that's before you've even turned the miner on and mined a single bit of BTC on it. And I've actually heard a lot of people buying specifically Bitcoin miners with no intention of ever mining on them, just to resell them in a year or so when they expect the price of these miners to skyrocket again. Now, is it certain to play out this way? I have no idea. Nobody does, because we can't tell the future. All we can do is look at the history of what's happened previously and see how that lines up with the current situation we're in. And graphs like this one really helps with that by putting things into context. But maybe even more so this next graph we're going to look at as we discuss the first con of buying a Bitcoin ASIC miner right now. And the first con is of course the upcoming Bitcoin block reward halving, which is that once every 4 years, the amount of new Bitcoin paid out to miners for every new block is cut in half. And practically what this means is that at that point, every Bitcoin miner is going to start making exactly half as much money every day compared to how much it was earning before the halving. And at the time of recording this video, we are just about 4 months away from this halving, meaning that if you buy a BTC miner now, after 4 months of mining on it, it'll start making half as much money every day. That is, of course, unless the price of Bitcoin were to go up before then. And you might be asking yourself what this graph I mentioned is. Well, it's this one. And what we're looking at here is the price of Bitcoin centered around each Bitcoin block reward halving. So basically they're taking the price of Bitcoin going 2 years before and 2 years after the halving and laying them on top of each other, with each 4-year period, or era as they're calling it, being a different color. And what we can see here is that the 2 years before the halving, we see low coin prices generally, but after the halving, prices start to just go up and up and up for about 500 days before finally starting to crash down again. Now, we can't say for certain that it's the Bitcoin halving that triggers the bull market to start, but there really seems to be a very strong correlation here, doesn't it? And also when you think about it logically, it kind of does make sense. With the halving, you are cutting the supply of new Bitcoin coming onto the market by half overnight. And lower supply usually means higher demand, and higher demand usually means price goes up. So wait, what was the con again? Well, it's that in about 120 days, all Bitcoin miners will start earning half as much BTC every day. So there's likely to be a period after that where most of you won't be able to run these ASIC miners profitably until the Bitcoin price hopefully reaches about twice the price it is now. Or the network hash rate goes down. More on that in just a bit. But first, let's talk about the second pro of getting a BTC ASIC right now. And that is that even though the halving is coming up, Bitcoin is probably one of the most reliable coins to be mining. Now, when I say reliable, what I mean is that out of all the thousands and thousands of cryptos, Bitcoin is probably the one that is least likely to go away or crash like crazy. Of course, you can buy miners for all different kinds of coins, even for very low market cap coins, or even for coins that have only existed for less than a few months in some cases. And the newer or smaller a coin is, of course, the more risky it can be to buy a miner for that coin, as neither of them are established enough to be able to be considered a reliable income source for miners. For example, if you buy a miner for a brand new coin, that coin has no track record of being legitimate, meaning there's a risk the coin might just be a quick pump and dump scheme by the creator. And if that's the case, well, then the miner you bought for that coin might just be completely useless after the creator runs away with all the money. And we'll get more into why coins with tiny market caps are risky to buy miners for a bit later in the video. But in short, a small market cap obviously means the coin isn't very highly valued, meaning it can't pay out very much to miners, which then in turn means there isn't very much money to be shared among the miners for that coin. But Bitcoin, on the other hand, is basically the exact opposite of both of those things. Because not only is Bitcoin, of course, the very first crypto ever, meaning it's as established as it gets, but it's also the biggest crypto there is, both in terms of market cap as well as just coin price overall. And while other coins like Ethereum has done detrimental things like switching from mining to staking, meaning it's no longer possible to mine it, there's pretty much no risk of something like that happening to Bitcoin, for reasons that are a little bit beyond the scope of this video. Moving on to our second con though, and that is that the total network hash rate for Bitcoin basically just keeps climbing every single day. So, in mining, the amount of coins paid out to miners is a fixed amount every day, and in simple terms, those coins are shared equally between all the people mining the coin based on how much hash rate each person has. So, with the total hash rate for Bitcoin growing every day, that means that every day your ASIC miner is going to make a bit less Bitcoin than the day before, because every day the amount of hash rate your ASIC provides becomes a smaller portion of the total network hash rate. But the question we have to ask ourselves here is, how much does that actually matter though? Because we might be mining slightly less Bitcoin every day, but at least we're still getting some Bitcoin every day. And your motivations for wanting that, as well as your mining strategy and your circumstances for mining, like your power price, are all going to be highly individual. But for many of you, getting some Bitcoin every day, even if that amount shrinks day by day, is still going to be better than getting no Bitcoin. But the biggest factor that is going to play a role here is, of course, the profitability. Basically meaning, is the amount of Bitcoin you are mining every day worth more than the price you're paying for the electricity to run your miner? Because otherwise, you're better off just taking the money you would have spent on power and just outright buy Bitcoin for that money instead. So, let's take the S19K Pro, the sweet spot miner I talked about earlier, and use that as an example. Currently, that miner makes about $11 of Bitcoin every day, and at an electricity price of 15 cents per kilowatt hour, which is kind of a high average residential power rate depending on who you ask, running this miner costs about $10 per day. So that means that running this miner, you get $1 worth more of Bitcoin every day by mining as opposed to buying the coin. Of course, as the network hash rate grows, those $11 will decrease slowly until you hit $10, and at that point you're better off just buying the coin instead. Except if during that time the price of Bitcoin has gone up, because that of course means that the Bitcoin you're mining every day is worth more, even though the amount of coin you're receiving is shrinking. There is of course also the possibility that the network hash rate might start to decline instead of grow, and we actually might see that happening after the halving. Because as we know, when the halving happens, all Bitcoin mining payouts will be cut in half. And that means that everyone who at that point is paying more than half in power compared to what they're earning mining Bitcoin will become unprofitable. For example, if you're earning $10 worth of Bitcoin every day but paying more than $5 in power, you'd be unprofitable after the halving. And at that point, you're better off just shutting down your miner and buying the coin instead. Of course, unless the Bitcoin price goes up or the network hash rate goes down. Now, it is of course impossible to know how many people have power that costs more than half of what they're earning mining Bitcoin, but most likely it is at least some percentage of the total network hash rate that are currently mining that will become unprofitable and have to shut off at that point, lowering the network hash rate as a result. But if that, plus an eventual coin price increase, will be enough to keep you profitable, well, that is something I can't predict for you. But that leads me to our next pro, which is that, as we know, the latest generation of Bitcoin miners just released, meaning we can get in early on these new, most efficient miners. And how that relates is that, of course, the less power your miner uses per terahash, the bigger the margin between what you're paying for power versus how much you're earning is. And getting in early on a new generation of miners will, in theory, set you up to be in the best possible position to stay profitable for as long as possible, and more relevantly, to be as competitive as possible. Because of course, in a hypothetical world where everyone pays the same price per kilowatt hour of power, it would be the people with the oldest and least efficient ASIC miners that would become unprofitable and have to turn off their miners first, which would then lower the network hash rate and increase the profitability for all the people with more efficient, newer generation ASIC miners. Now, unfortunately, this relates closely to our last con, because obviously we don't live in a world where everyone has the same power price. No, in reality, the fact is that there are plenty of massive Bitcoin mining farms out there that use very old mining hardware, but will still stay profitable even after the halving, as they are paying close to nothing for power. Now, this is a bit exaggerated, because while it is true that there are plenty of huge Bitcoin mining farms out there with extremely cheap power, those farms of course have other expenses like renting the facilities they're in, paying the staff that operates the farms, and so on. But what this last con boils down to is that specifically in Bitcoin mining, you are up against the toughest competition possible. Since there is so much money to be made in Bitcoin mining, that is going to attract the people with the best circumstances, the biggest budgets to build out farms, and the most knowledge and experience to do so. But just because there are others with better circumstances than you, doesn't mean there's nothing to be gained for you. And with how big Bitcoin mining is, it also works as an advantage for us. More on that in my last pro, and then we'll wrap up with a quick summary as well as what my final conclusion for my own farm is. So the fact is that Bitcoin is currently paying out over $20 million worth of BTC to its miners every single day. And with a total network hash rate of 550 exahash, that means there is the equivalent of 5.5 million 100 terahash ASICs currently mining Bitcoin. So why is this a pro for us? Well, practically speaking, to see a 10% reduction in mining rewards, over 500,000 new Bitcoin ASICs need to be produced, purchased, shipped, and deployed. And with such a massive amount of money paid out to miners every day, each new ASIC that comes online will only reduce everyone's payouts by a minuscule amount, as there is so much money to be shared. In contrast to this, we can look at a tiny coin like Grin that only pays out a bit over $4,000 per day to miners. And to reduce everyone's mining rewards by 10%, only 25 new Grin ASICs needs to come online. No, not 25,000 or even 2,500 new ASICs, 25 total new ASICs. So hopefully that puts into perspective the absolute scale of the Bitcoin network. But where does this all leave us? Well, let me quickly summarize all of this, and then I'll tell you what my personal conclusion is. Alright, so buying a Bitcoin ASIC as an at-home miner isn't very straightforward at all. On one hand, we probably won't see prices on Bitcoin miners go any lower than this during this market cycle. And that, together with the fact that the latest generation of miners was just released, makes for a good case to purchase now in order to get in early on this latest generation at a very low price. But in contrast to that, the reality is that not only is the network hash rate for Bitcoin growing every day, but we also have a halving coming up that will cut mining rewards for all Bitcoin miners in half very soon. You'd have to make your own predictions on how you think that halving will affect the network hash rate and coin price, which in turn will affect the potential profitability of any miner you're looking at buying. But after considering those things, we can at least feel somewhat secure in that Bitcoin mining specifically is probably the most reliable income source for miners, as the sheer size and track record of Bitcoin means it's not likely to go anywhere anytime soon. Of course, that also means that the competition when mining BTC is as tough as it gets within mining. Because of course, the bigger a coin is and the more a coin pays out to miners every day, the bigger the business around mining it is going to get, meaning the people with the most favorable circumstances for mining are going to target that specific coin. And finally, we also need to acknowledge the fact that since Bitcoin has such a massive network and pays out so much to miners every day, it takes a lot of new hardware coming online to reduce the mining rewards in any significant way. So next, let me tell you my personal interpretation of all of this and what I am planning to do based on it. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Coin Mining Central is an online store for ASIC miners, and there's no doubt that right now, ASIC mining is by far looking like the most profitable type of mining, and the miners that I'm personally most interested in right now would probably be the Bitmain L7 and E9 Pro, as well as the Jasminer X16Q. And what's cool about Coin Mining Central is that they always offer free worldwide express shipping, and I've always felt fully comfortable recommending them to you guys, and here's why. As opposed to most other ASIC vendors that are based overseas, Coin Mining Central is based and run out of England, Europe, where they have to adhere to the very strict regulations for customer support and personal detail protection that we have over here. And of course, all brand new miners come with a full manufacturer warranty as well. And because of this, Coin Mining Central has been a highly trusted ASIC miner store for miners like you and me for over 5 years at this point. They also care about this community, being very active and reachable on social media, and they've also provided loads of exclusive discount codes for you guys that you can use together with the link in the video description to save big on any miner that you want to get. And speaking of prices, I don't know if you've noticed, but ASIC prices have been dropping dramatically these past few months, so right now could be a very good time to stock up on some cheap hardware before the crypto market recovers. Especially considering you get the already competitive pricing that Coin Mining Central has, plus the free worldwide shipping, plus the exclusive discount codes that I mentioned. So go check that out today. I'll have all of those discount codes and the exclusive link for you down in the video description. So where does all this leave me personally? Well, I'm actually seriously considering getting a Bitcoin miner, even though I don't expect I'll ever theoretically break even or ROI on the machine by mining on it. But here's my personal plan / prediction of how buying a miner will play out for me. I'd get something like the 𝗧-𝗦𝗡𝗏 S19K Pro that I mentioned for about $2,500, and it'll probably be slightly profitable mining on it for me until the halving, making me about $11 a day in BTC while costing roughly $9 in power at my electric rate. So, as you can see, I'm obviously not going to ROI on a $2,500 machine by mining $2 of profit a day, but you can probably tell where I'm going with this. So, after, let's say, 100 days of mining before the halving, I'll have paid $2,500. Alright, my light just went out, but we'll keep going. So after, let's say, 100 days of mining before the halving, I'll have paid $2,500 for the miner, $900 for power, and I'll have about $1,100 worth of Bitcoin. At that point, because of the halving, the miner most likely won't be profitable for me for a good while until the Bitcoin price at least doubles from where it is now. But it is my personal prediction that the Bitcoin price probably will at least double, if not triple from here, still before the peak of the next potential bull market. So at that point, not only would the BTC I mined now be worth at least double, so about $2,200 or more, but I might also be able to sell the miner itself for at least double what I bought it for, maybe even triple or more. And that's also not to mention that I'm likely to get a good few hundred days more of mining with it then, during the bull market at pretty good profitability before I decide to sell it. Now, all this is of course based on my own personal prediction, which is that we'll see another bull market in about a year from now, and the price I expect Bitcoin to hit during that potential bull market. But of course that is all just speculation based on everything I have laid out in this video. And now it's time for you to make your own prediction on how you think things will play out. Please subscribe for more mining videos, and over here on the screen I'll put a video that goes more into detail on how this 4-year crypto market cycle works, as well as a video that explains more in depth how mining profitability works in real life. So I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.